So, here in the state of Mississippi, Senator Scott Delano, wow, he minced no words, as they say, on social media. And Senator Jeremy England shared his post and doubled down. And I'm not going to read the entire thing. It's kind of long, but they are directing ire at Insurance Commissioner Mike Chaney. Just believe that he should be doing more to help the folks in South Mississippi deal with the continuously rising cost of homeowners insurance. Says that all the Gulf states except Mississippi have implemented a successful mitigation program since Katrina. And he basically said in the post, did Senator Delano, yes, I'm still mad. But he goes on to say he's proud of the resilience and commitment to preserve the Gulf Coast of Mississippi. So, this looks like another situation, Rhino, we've become accustomed to where brothers are fighting brothers. Republicans are fighting Republicans here. And in this case, it's two Republican members of the Mississippi State Senate from the Gulf Coast region who are, at least on social media, letting the Commissioner of Insurance, Mike Chaney, know he needs to do more to, at least in their opinion, to mitigate the rising cost of homeowners insurance. Now, for what it's worth, Rhino, it ain't just the coast that's experiencing that problem. And by the way, from an insurance perspective, it's not just homeowners insurance. Automobile insurance, health insurance, healthcare insurance, also on the rise. In fact, there are estimates from industry analysts about health insurance rising next year by as much as 15% nationwide on average. Don't know what that means exactly here in the state of Mississippi, and they cite, hey, higher cost of health care. Of course, that insurance is regulated, as you guys know, at the state level, not the federal level. I mean, there are federal laws and policies that apply to insurance. Most of those, honestly, or a good number of those, not most, came about with the passing of the Affordable Care Act, the so-called Obamacare in 2010. Just the messenger here, get ready. You probably are already seeing, perhaps, notifications from your carriers, your employer, etc., about insurance going up. One of the reasons that automobile insurance is going up that has been cited is tariffs. A lot of parts are only available from manufacturers abroad. Those parts are shipped in for repairs, which is where insurance is on the hook, and they're now more expensive. I know I had to buy a part for my vehicle a couple of weeks ago. I was shocked at how much it went up. I'd had to purchase this part before a year or so ago, and in that short period of time, it increased by about 30%. Little surprised in that respect. But yesterday, before we go to break, I'll get this started. We'll continue it on the other side of the break. We talk a lot on this program about education freedom, school choice, and I'm certainly not shy about conveying my support for such policy. And you guys know we've discussed it, that the Speaker of the House is a huge proponent of school choice. There are many members of the House that align with him. And he created 4 different task forces, committees, if you will, to study 4 different issues, categories of issues, in the period between sessions with the hope of gaining some additional information and then outlining a roadmap for addressing these issues in the coming session. One of those, education freedom. Another, the public employees retirement system. Voting is another one. and just elections in general, early voting, et cetera, that's been a controversial topic to be studied. But back to one that some meetings have been conducted on recently, that's school choice, education freedom. And so yesterday, Rhino, you've heard me say this many times where I describe, and nobody's told me that I've got this wrong yet, but in general, if a student wants to transfer from a public school to another public school, they've got to get permission from the boards that run those districts. And 99.9% of the time, the home school district for the student is going to decline that request. And you don't see many requests because they know you're wasting your time. It's going to be declined. So I made that statement yesterday. I discussed and described that yesterday, how that works and how school choice, if we could get at least just plain old open enrollment portability passed, that a student could transfer from their home public school to another public school, and that their home public school couldn't block it. The district there couldn't block that transfer. And there's an individual that listened to the show yesterday that said that I was talking about what school choice would look like if we passed it. No, that's not what I said. And so they were wondering, well, why do we need that if you can do it this way? That's not what I said. We're coming right back in the Element Well studio. So I just want to follow up on that. In that anytime I've described that process, it's always been with respect to current law. And that law that has been, or legislation that has been proposed, including last year by Representative Jansen Owen, would essentially prohibit the home school district from blocking a transfer. That's really, in a nutshell, what it would have done. I mean, there's some other nuances and provisions, but in general, right now the process is if you want to transfer out of a school to another, you got to go request that and receive permission from both the transferor and the transferee schools. So in this case, if this legislation would have passed, it's referred to typically as public-to-public transfer, or public school portability is another way it is described. The process would still remain where parents or guardians would have to submit a written request for a transfer, but the transferor school, the home district, could not block that transfer. Right now they can veto it and say, yep, we're not going to let you transfer. You got to stay here. So what I was referring to and describing yesterday was the current environment, current law, versus how it would change if public-to-public transfer or public school portability were enacted into law, signed into law by the governor. Thus, the school district to which the government says a student must attend from a public school perspective couldn't block a transfer request. In a nutshell, what it would do. So this person heard wrong. What I was referring to is the current environment, not the environment post-enactment of such legislation that would
either they heard wrong or they just simply lack the mental capability to understand the topic at hand and should just shut up.
Yeah.
We need to get to a point in society where we tell stupid people to sit down and shut up.
And the other thing is, I've talked a lot about school district consolidation, and I generally favor that. The only thing I've said is, let's do it responsibly and prudently, thoughtfully, methodically. I don't know that it makes sense to say, hey, look, we got 82 counties. Let's just consolidate down to 82 districts. I'm not sure if that's the best model. But I absolutely believe there are situations where there's some protectionism going on. I know you're shocked to hear that, especially in the academic community, maybe more protectionist than the political community. Yeah, there's no doubt. You're not sure.
Politicians actually wield the actual power, so they're more protectionist.
That's true. You're right about that. But you know what I'm saying here, that they tend to appear so virtuous, but at the end of the day, they're looking out for their hide. And I'm not saying I'd necessarily blame them. Here's the difference, though. We pay their damn salaries, right? That's the difference. This is not like a private company where you're trying to protect your turf, but you're still, guess what, having to compete in the open marketplace to do so. And you should not receive protectionist policy and law from government. And that's exactly what we have in schools. So this person indicates that I've said that there would be no savings achieved with that. No, I've never said that. In fact, I believe there would be savings achieved. What I've said is...
I'm leaning more towards the he needs to sit down and shut up part of my argument.
What I've said is, and I know you've heard me and the folks have too a million times, you can't necessarily just say, well, okay, we're going to eliminate this district. Every dollar spent at the back office will be saved. That's all I'm saying. Don't expect that. It doesn't work quite that cleanly. Will it? Is it at least open up the door to achieve some meaningful savings? Absolutely. All for it on that basis. And I'm glad to hear that the governor supports that as well. And I know that he thinks very business-like in his policies, and he's thinking the same thing. And over time, the way the districts have settled out and evolved, yeah, it just makes sense that some of these districts where you got one or two schools maybe in the entire district, well, that's crazy. And it is absolutely true, and I've shared this on the program, that the legislators get beat up pretty hard by district people, superintendents, admins, school boards, etc. They let them know, don't do away with my district. It's protectionist stuff.
It's almost like the school boards and the admins and all those people have more free time than your average person.
Right in the middle of the school year.
How is that possible? Could it be we have too many of them?
Exactly.
They don't have enough to do.
Okay. So, as they say in legal lawsuits, now comes, you've seen that before, right? How that'll preface. The parents' campaign. Now, full disclosure, folks, I've been advocating for education freedom and school choice since 2014, and that's when I was invited by Grant Callen, the founder and CEO of Empower Mississippi, arguably the state's leading advocate for school choice, to serve as the chairman of the board of Empower. And I accepted his invitation and served in that role for 10 years. I last year rotated off, felt like it was long enough, and opened the door for another board member to serve as the chair. I still remain on the board at the request of the board. But the Parents Campaign views Empower Mississippi and everything it stands for as the absolute devil. I mean, we're just Satan. And yesterday, a couple of days ago actually, they posted, I follow them, about these meetings taking place, the speaker in his special committee, where it looks to me like, Rhino, some momentum is building towards getting something done. You've also heard the buzz of the governor saying, and he hasn't said anything explicitly that I've heard. We don't have anything definitive to point to. But usually where there's buzz, there's something going on. The possibility of calling a special session to enact such legislation. Well, here's what the Parents Campaign says, that as parents and grandparents of students in Madison and Clinton public schools, this is from some of them. This was from the opinion page in the Clarion Ledger. We want to raise awareness around the growing push for private school vouchers. That's what they love to focus on in Mississippi. Every single year, voucher bills are introduced, and every single year they have been defeated. Right, because there are people, unfortunately, in our legislature that don't like freedom. Moms, dads, grandparents, and faith leaders have been telling our legislators through calls, emails, and in-person meetings that we do not want vouchers for private schools in our state. Curse those private schools, Rhino. You know, the ones that literally subsidize the public schools, because if every student, some 49,000 of them, were to exit their private school and enroll in a public school, the public schools in Mississippi would crater. They could not accept 49,000 because they're not getting any more money for it. Those people are paying the money to send their kids to public school and then paying more money, and God bless them that they have the ability to send their kids to private school, thus taking the responsibility off the public school to educate the private school student. Am I getting into second order thinking here?
Yep.
Am I wrong in that?
No.
Okay.
But second order thinking is lost on the willfully ignorant.
Well, I wanted to check that with you. You know, I deeply respect your opinion on stuff like that, and you understand it. This is simple second order thinking here. We need more of that in our schools. Good grief.
You would think the parents and grandparents and faith leaders and educators would be capable of second-order thinking, especially if they're trying to organize.
We're coming right back with Colonel Mark Prine.